Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Hendriks, and I work for 2.5 years now within the Customs Support Group with lots of pleasure because we are part of a really game changer within our customs business. I have a background of 20 years in customs, logistics, and trade compliance. And during this presentation, I will guide you as our customers through the path to digitalization to learn what we need from you to make digitalization in customs a success. Next, please. First, some key facts about our customs support company. Now we are already situated and located in 50 plus strategic locations through whole Europe. And of course, we keep expanding our footprint to serve more than 10,000 customers already, with over more than 700 qualified customs employees and consultants. Of course, we are AEO certified. What's very important in our business to be seen as a trustful, reliable, but most important, compliant company where we serve our customers as a fast, accurate, and compliant way. Next. First, let me start on where are we exactly in the supply chain. As you see, we are a neutral customs broker that works with companies directly, like sellers, exporters, importers, but also production plants. We work with digital platforms like Alpega, a transporting platform, and of course with logistics service providers 3PL and 4PL, directly but also indirectly, so via the 3PL. We are the linking pin to the customs authorities with EDIs to serve you as a customer, but not only the customs authorities, also tax and the Food and Consumer Standard Authority. If you talk about blockchain, you see that all parties related in our supply chain already do a kind of blockchain initiative, like Portbase. It's a system for the ports in the Netherlands that is linked to all terminals where goods can arrive via short sea or deep sea. And all the data entered in these systems, for example, also by Chinese shipping lines, is used for customs authorities to select certain goods for additional checks, physical checks, or document controls. So it's very important that the data added in these systems is accurate and complete. And we see in practice, for example, a master bill of lading needs to be complete, otherwise your container will not be released. But the authorities will release a new procedure at the end of this year, that's called the container release message. Now we have the flexibility to custom clear all containers that will arrive during the weekend or during the nights up front. But that will change in the near future. So it's very important that we make sure all the data is correct to avoid delays and holds in the systems. For example, you also need to have correct weights, values, and goods descriptions. And when that's not correct, you receive a mismatch and your container will be on hold. Next. Where did we come from or where are we going to? The Brexit forced us to change our business. We have experienced a growth of 150% in volume. And if you look at e-commerce, that's already completed, automated. But me as well are ordering many packages online. And if you see on the labels, for example, if you buy a package via AliExpress, the goods description is never reflecting the goods that you actually bought. Also, the value that is deducted from your credit card is never reflecting the value on the labels. So there's a high risk for companies that do customs to prevent any fines because you need to make sure you pay the correct value towards the authorities. Since we are also working with lots of countries like Russia, Ukraine, Turkey, we have many papers that we need to check. So our customs clerks always need to have a manual eye to make sure the data is correct. But I'm very happy with the IT folks within the customs group, since we have implemented many tools that helped us to reduce manual work and also to reduce papers. And now I'm very convinced that we are the game changer and a leading company in digital services by 2024. Next. If you talk about digitalization and our business, there are so many complexities and risks involved. Compliance, the number one. If you ship to embargoed or sanctioned countries, you need to make sure you have that information upfront analyzed before you start shipping. For example, last year we had a shipment with a second-hand metal machine and it was shipped to Iran. But with a metal machine, you can also produce weapons. So for these kind of shipments, you need licenses to export, dual use licenses. You need to go to the Central Bureau of In and Export, but that license can take up to 8, maybe 12 weeks before you have that in place. And until that time, you're not allowed to ship. So preparation is key. If you look at the second point, the NVWA in the Netherlands, called as the Food and Consumer Product Safety Authority, if you ship, for example, plants or animals or meat, the things we eat, we need to make sure we protect our people in the EU for diseases. But also, if you are importing, for example, toys for your little children, you need to make sure that there is no cadmium inside and that it follows the legislation what is part of the Food and Consumer Authority. The third one, preferential origin. We have lots of agreements with many countries worldwide where you can reduce or even avoid paying duties. But these kind of things and all these documents we need to know upfront. So if you're going to digitalize, we have that information that you are not paying too much for your goods. Supply chain solutions via an LSP, a logistics service provider. We are situated, my office, in the logistics hotspot of the Netherlands, Venlo. So we have many road freight from the UK, from Switzerland, and also Turkey. But then you are not always directly in contact with the end and exporter. So there is also a huge waste because there are multiple parties involved in the supply chain. So if we have a question directly about the goods, it's always going via an LSP. And if you want to connect via EDI, it would be preferred to have a direct connection. Groupage shipments. As said, now we see it for the Brexit. In the Netherlands, we are a logistics country, and we have many simplified procedures. I am able to do a clearance or an export on any of your house addresses, for example. We add that location to a license, and we can proceed with your shipments. But now in the UK, they are not used to that amount of customs freight. The importer and exporter in the UK need to apply for that license themselves. So you need to have some customs knowledge to get those licenses in place. And also due to the many license requests, it will take 6 to 8 months to get a license in place. So you need to find a solution there, like customs support, who can act as a control tower. Because if you have 10 shipments loaded in one trailer with 10 different importers, and they all use a different broker, one party should appoint all the clearances to the correct party. And you have the risk that one shipment will be selected for a physical control by customs, meaning that the trailer needs to be unloaded. So all shipments on the trailer can have an impact and a delay in your process, and you need to find a location where you can unload the goods. Type and complexity of goods. There are many goods shipping worldwide that need an additional license. Maybe they have a quotation restriction that you are not allowed to import, for example, more than 10 tons of steel a year. These are all the things you need to check up front before you start in and exporting and before you start sharing your data to customs support to make sure that's arranged. Very important as well is the downtime of systems, that we have a backup and recovery system in place, some kind of emergency plan, because all those high volumes through EDI sounds nice, but as soon as the IT is down, the manual capacity is not sufficient anymore to manage all these kind of volumes. Sharing data with non-EU countries. The UK stepped out of the EU. So you need to make sure that you follow GDPR legislation. There is also some confidential information shared via EDI, and how are other countries acting on that? So the last point, but the most important one, is the liability. For example, if a company sends me an invoice and we send to Germany, we need to make sure the code for customs is DE. Once there is a conflict and you go to court, you can have the issue that the company is telling us, yeah, but you adjust the EDI, so you are liable. All these kind of things need to be checked and covered in agreements, contracts, service levels agreements, etc. So there are many things we need to cover before you can start to automate your process. Next. Current versus digital. For example, you have on the left side 3 exporters from the UK, so 3 different invoices. It's going to the customs clerk and they make an export declaration. They put it into a transit documentation to be document to be able to move the goods inland in the Netherlands. So they make a print, they scan it, they email it. My people are doing the same. They make 3 sets because there are 3 different parties involved. But it's ridiculous if you see how much paper we're also wasting in these kind of processes. And we want to be green and environmental responsible. So in the future, we need to make sure that we connect to the brokers in the EU, but also outside the EU, that at least we can share some customs data. And of course, you also avoid mistakes by typing over. Next. On this slide, you see the processes within our customs process. The most important one nowadays is client onboarding. The authorities require from customs support that we screen you as a customer, know your customer. We are expected to at least answer 30 to 40 points to make sure our customer is compliant, reliable, but also credible. So we need to make sure we have EDI links to, for example, Dun & Bradstreet to see, okay, does the customer have credibility? After screening the type of products, the shipping destination, but also the origin of the products, via some tools we have like Power Apps, we receive some traffic light, red, orange, and green, meaning that we can add you as a customer to our group. But then you need to sign a power of attorney, a legal document that we work on behalf and on a risk of you as a customer, because we cannot check all the data in your systems. That's your responsibility as the seller of the products. For that process, we work with a nice tool where we can send a link to the authorized signer of the documents for that company. And that can sometimes, that's depending on the Chamber of Commerce extract, multiple authorized persons. But we need from every authorized director a signature. With the tools we have in place, it's reducing 2 to 3 days in my process to get all the legal documents done. But as you can hear, this process to become a client within customs brokerage can take 1 to 2 days still. Then the second part is data entry and data processing. Before we start creating documents or pulling the EDIs, we need to make sure that the compliance part is checked. Is the origin correct? Do you have all the customs code we need to have in place to be able to move to the next process, and that's filling to customs authorities. And for that, we have some nice tools, what I will touch later on. And the last pillar is, of course, very important, transparency to our customers, reporting. We use lots of tools via Power BI, as you can see as the background as well, where customers can see what we are doing, how we are doing it, but also are all the documents cleared properly by customs to avoid any penalty afterwards. Next. Well, on the left side, you see how we worked in the past. Many piles of paper, but it's also very error sensitive. And due to the increase of volume, also the customs authorities have some delays. So if you make a mistake, you need to write an official letter to the customs authorities. And it can take 6 months to even 3 years before your issue or your mistake is being resolved and that you get your paid duty or tax back from the authorities. So now we are the game changer, in my opinion, because we implemented so many tools that helped us, but also you as a customer to have a fast, accurate and compliant process. We have tools like machine learning via artificial intelligence, tools that can read out official original PDF files, for example. Of course, also there, you need to make sure that you have an agreement with your customer as soon as they change their official invoice, that there's communication towards customs support to avoid a hold on the process. But it helps us to stop overtyping of data, and then we should do what we are hired for, to be a customs consultant and make sure that the data is complete and good. Another tool is robotic process automation. These are kind of apps what helps me as a director to start my day. In the morning, I want to see the dashboard. What went wrong? Did we had mistakes? Do we had errors in the process? So when I open up my laptop, for example, all the programs I use are opened within 30 seconds. So that's a good reduction of my time. Blockchain already touched the part of port base, but as said, we need to make sure we collaborate more with parties like Alpega, but also other brokers in other countries. And how will we become the leader to be the customs broker of choice for digital platforms to make sure we are highly efficient, accurate, and automated in our processes? Next. How are we going to approach this part? As shared before, we need to know a lot from our customers. So be prepared that you need 1 to 2 weeks to define exactly who you are, what you do in the supply chain, and measure your flows, to which countries you ship and in what time, so we can also prepare our capacity. As soon as we have that data from you, we can start analyzing together to make sure you have the most effective and cost-effective process to get your goods moved through customs in the most efficient way. Then we design a process together via EDI or manual, make sure the agreements are covered in an SLA or an SOP, and in the verify phase, we align on the dashboards and the QBRs you want to see from us on a quarterly base on how we are serving you as a customer. Next. What do the customers need to prepare? Of course, the general information, who is the exporter, who is the seller, but also who is the buyer in country. Make sure you are registered properly by the tax authorities with a VAT number and a registration number at customs called AORI. Incoterms, very important. Who is responsible for which part in the process? Who is paying for the transport cost? What can be added to the amount of your goods? And that's the basis for paying duties and additional taxes. The HS code I will touch later on, but the origin of goods is also very important because also, for example, sun panels from China do have an anti-dumping rate of 85%. So that's a huge impact on your total landed cost of the goods. We need to screen your invoice and make sure all the required data is on there to avoid issues when you cross the border. And most important, options to share the data out of your systems, but also from your documentation. Next. An HS code maybe looks simple. This is an example of some scarves that you are shipping, and most companies only know the 8 or 10-digit HS code. But in fact, we need to declare 18 digits towards the authorities. In this example, you see that you pay 8% on duty, but also that we need to declare the exact number of items. So when you have on the invoice only mentioned 12 cartons, we need to take the phone, call you, ask you how many pieces do you ship, and these kind of things you want to avoid during your shipping process. Just one click, Martijn. And even for this, we need to make sure that the exporter, the seller of the product, tell us that there is no fur of cats and dogs inside. These are all compliance questions that we need to declare on your behalf. So these are the things we will cover in an SOP as soon as you start business with us. Next. Well, how do we interface nowadays? Well, we take the load off your mind as customer support because we are able to work with all kind of formats that come from a CRM system, an ERP, a transport management system, a duty management system. Our IT folks and consultants will clearly check what data is already provided, what needs to be adjusted by customer support, and then we are able to put that in the correct format like XML, CSV, or JSON to provide it to the authorities and make sure your goods can be exported or imported. Next. Well, here a kind of view on our dashboards. We work, of course, with some compliance tools because the legislation in customs is so complex and so wide. The system needs to work for us. We have, for example, a policy with high risks product like alcohol, where you need to pay excise, or maybe tobacco, where are many risks where we're not allowed to ship. Then you need to have the system working for you. So we have about over 1,000 rules that help my customs clerk to avoid risks. So when there's, for example, a strange code in the system, a pop-up will come. Please go to compliance and double check before you release the shipment to the authorities. On the right side, you see the dashboards, what we can share with our customers, and not only how many documents did you ship, but also how many of your documents are properly closed. For example, if you say you ship via Rotterdam Port, but due to some traffic jams, you drive to Calais, we need to make sure that's covered to the authorities to make sure your documents are cleared and you are able to declare a 0% tax rate. So that's also for your financial administration very important. But also some credit limits and outstanding amounts by customers. We need to share data, make that transparent to avoid communication and email about lots of topics. Next. Very important, a very nice tool where I'm proud of is the ticketing system. This is the replacement within our company that replaces the old-fashioned email. It's a ticketing system, so every order will receive a unique ticket number. What's the order trail through the process? We notice that nowadays in the logistics, it's always urgent and all companies are calling. How long does it take before I get my export? In the near future, we have a view function for our customers where they can look up their order status themselves. And if they still want to check with the customs clerk, they exactly see which person in my company is handling their order. So we avoid many waste in communication by calling all colleagues who is working on that kind of fact. But also value stream mapping that we can manage and monitor our processes internally to continuously improve our processes for a faster, accurate, and more compliant service.